We're going to continue our discussion on Chapter 8 by talking about the trade area, a word you've already heard a couple times used in this course material, and we'll learn and really dive deeper into in this lecture, this section of the module. So the retail trade area is really the geographic area that accounts for the majority of the store's sales and a majority of the store's customer base. So this is just an example of Hickory Hollow Mall in Nashville, Tennessee, and their trade area. So if you look at the you can see the mall site, and you can see the blue area, which is like their primary trade area, and the purple area, which is their secondary trade area. So this will all make sense here in just a second. But when we talk about our primary trade area, this is the geographic area where 50 to 70% of our customers come from. Our secondary trade area is where the next 20 to 30% of our trade area, of where our customers come from. And what we call the tertiary trade area is everyone else. And so when we measure the trade area, it's not necessarily in miles. It's done in drive time and mileage. So when we talk about it takes 15 minutes to get there, it takes 10 minutes to get there, it's about 5 miles or 20 minutes from my house. So there's always a drive time number associated with the trade area. Now, the zones, the trade area, the primary trade area, secondary trade area, and tertiary trade area are never in concentric circles. And why do you think that is? The zones are never in concentric circles because they have to take natural and artificial barriers into consideration, as well as the location of competing retailers. And so that's why some of these maps tend to stay to the south east side of Nashville versus the northwest or southwest. Factors that affect the trade area, the first few, accessibility, the natural and physical barriers. Do you have to drive across a mountain range? Do you have to drive across a river? Are there train tracks? What's in the way? The type of shopping area can impact the trade area. The type of store can impact the trade area. And when we talk about the type of stores, let's think about Starbucks for a second. Starbucks could have a trade area of 2 minutes walking time. Right? In large cities, we often see Starbucks on every corner. If you take a picture of that, or if you look at that picture where the arrows are pointing, there's a Starbucks literally less than a block away from each other. And that's because the trade area is measured in walking time, and customers don't like to cross the street. And so the primary trade area here might be 2 minutes. Now think about a store like Bass Pro Shops. The primary trading area for Bass Pro Shops might be 2 hours. It's a specialty store. It's a destination store. And people are willing to drive to get there. So they will spend they're willing to spend the time to get to that location. So the type of store can really impact how you measure the trade area. Merchandise and competition can also impact the trade area. The type of merchandise you sell, similar to the type of store, the type of merchandise, if you sell something that can't be bought anywhere else, people might be willing to drive a little further to get to you. Competition, if they can drive closer to get to competition, they might do that. And the other thing that impacts your store is a parasite store. Now, a parasite store is a store that's owned by your own company. Could be the exact same store, could be the Gap to Banana Republic. And so you have to make sure that your customers aren't being split between 2 areas that are too close together. So all of those different factors impact how you assess the trade area. Now let's talk about how you measure the trade area. How do you identify the people who are in your trade area? The first way to do that is by customer spotting. And customer spotting is the process of locating the residences of your customers for your store on a map. Customer spotting, you can buy lists online of where your customers are coming from. You can use your own data to create a map of where your customers are coming from. Or you can ask your customers. So have you ever gone into a store and as you're getting ready to pay, they ask you for your zip code? Well, your zip code is a geographic identifier. So your retailer can see how far you drove or how far you came from to get to that location. Have you ever been asked for your telephone number? The area code is also a geographic identifier that retailers can use. Now, there are a lot of discrepancies in this data. I'm sure many of you do not have a Milledgeville phone number or often give a non-Milledgeville zip code when you're putting in your credit card information on a retailer's website or shopping at a retailer here in Milledgeville. So there can be some discrepancies, but it does give retailers a general idea, and this is especially useful for smaller retailers who don't have the capability or the technology or the money to use some of the other methods. One would be the United States Census Bureau to get demographic data. So if this works, we're going to take a look at some of the demographic data for Milledgeville. So bear with me for just a second. Demographic data for the Census Bureau is collected every 10 years. So really the last one was done in 2010, which does make this data kind of old. But what the census data does, the United States Census Bureau, is that they can use the data to kind of predict trends that happen in the years between the census. And so it collects demographic data such as age, sex, ethnicity, education, marital status. It looks at every household in the United States and really works to provide a snapshot of our country's demographic, social, and economic characteristics. And so if we just take a look here, this gives us population. And so we have our population estimates base of 18,000 in 2010, and we can see our population estimates as of July 1, 2014 at 19,000. And so this obviously shows us that they're going to give us another population estimate this summer. And so the population at the actual time of the census was just under 18,000. But what's great about this is it tells us how many people are under 5 years old, under 18. So how many children live in Milledgeville? How many senior citizens live in Milledgeville? What percentage are female versus male? It tells us their race. We can scroll down and see where they live, what their median house payment is. We can tell what their level of education is, in general, if they have health insurance or not, what types of jobs they have. We can look at all of the employment data. This tells us so much about the people, which helps us understand our customers a little better. Another way to measure is to look at that tapestry segmentation, which you've heard mentioned a few times in this class. And the tapestry segmentation does combine that census data or the population data, the demographic data, with the lifestyles and purchase behavior characteristics. So if you remember, this is one of the outputs from when we looked at Chapter 4, the tapestry data. And I'm actually going to post a couple examples of tapestry data in the Chapter 8 folder in Module 2 so that you can look at an actual output of some of this tapestry data to learn a little bit more about our customers. Another way to measure the trade area is to look at the Spending Potential Index, the SPI. The SPI compares the local average expenditure with national average expenditures in a by product or by service measure. And so let's take a look at this, and this is just a very sample report. But we can see on here the tapestry segments for that area. It gives us a demographic summary of the area, and it tells us what they're spending. So if you look at men's apparel, which is the first item under apparel and services, the spending potential index is 177. What that means is that expenditures on men's apparel in Chicago, Illinois are 77% higher than spending on men's apparel nationwide. On average, men spend $770 per year on apparel in Chicago. Now, we don't have a sample up here, but if we look down at, let's use watches and jewelries, and imagine that number said 76 instead of 176. A spending potential index of 76 means that people in Chicago, Illinois are 24% less, spending 24% less on average than the national expenditure are. So this might not be a good area to sell watches and jewelry in, but it might be a great area to sell men's apparel in. The last thing that we look at is competition in the trade area. We've already identified competitors in many other parts of our research, but when we're looking at the trade area, we're now expanding our competitive research outside of just our city or our area, but we're expanding it to our trade area, which we know for some retailers, especially specialty retailers or destination retailers, the trade area could be quite large. So vendors can provide this information, they can provide this data, retailers can purchase the data, or it's readily available on websites for class projects or for small retailers who can't afford to purchase the data. And so you can easily look at where your competitors are located in relationship to your store. So something for you to think about. How far are you willing to drive to get to your favorite retailer? Or you could think about the opposite side. How far are you willing to drive to get groceries or gas or other necessity items that you purchase frequently? How far of a distance would make you visit a competitor versus your favorite retailer? How does trade area impact your shopping behaviors? And then think about that from a retailer's perspective.